Okay, so this is the 5.2 video on solving systems by substitution. All right, so when the system has one variable isolated in an equation, you can apply the substitution method. You have to get one of the variables by itself in order to use the substitution method. So sometimes it's automatically set up for you, and sometimes you can force it to work for you. All right, now, step one, I'm going to list all the steps, then we'll see some examples. So step one, you're going to substitute the value of the isolated variable, the variable is by itself, into the other equation. You're going to solve the new equation, and then you're going to plug the variables of the value back into the first equation, okay? And then solve for the last variable. That seems very confusing, but once you see it, it'll make more sense. So let's take this example. We have 2x plus 3y equal 5. We have x equals 5 minus y. You'll notice that we have a variable isolated. The x is isolated. So we're going to substitute. So if you ever play basketball or any sport, soccer, basketball, football, when you have a substitution, that means one player comes out and the other player comes in. Another example of a substitution would be whenever Mr. Alexander is not in class. If I'm out, then I'll have a substitute teacher. So it's basically just replacing one thing with something else. Since we know that x is the same thing as 5 minus y, then we could put 5 minus y anywhere we have an x. And we happen to have an x right here. And so we're going to take this 5 minus y and we're going to substitute it for x. And then we'll have only y's and be able to solve. So let's see what that looks like. And so I'm going to take the 5 minus y. I'm going to substitute it in. And it looks like this now. Instead of 2 times x, it's 2 times 5 minus y. You now notice we don't have any x's in this equation, and we can solve it down for y. So step 2, solve it down. So 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times negative 2 is negative 2y. Combine your like terms. Now you see why we had to do all that work in chapter 1, right? So a negative 2 plus 3 is 1. And then last step would be to subtract 10 from both sides. This part is just solving. Now we know what the value of y is. We can plug that back in to one of our equations. We're going to substitute because now we know that y is negative 5. Anywhere we have negative 5, or anywhere we have y, we can make that be negative 5. So I'm going to take negative 5, I'm going to put it into this equation. It doesn't matter which one you put it in on this last step, but I chose to do this one. And so now, instead of 3 times y, it says 3 times negative 5. Well, 3 times negative 5 is negative 15, and we solve the two-step equation. Now we get 2x is equal to 20. Divide by 2, and we get x is equal to 10. So most of this is just stuff that you already know how to do. It's just solving equations. The substitution part is the only part that's different. Okay, so what I would do is I would try to rework this problem on your own and work it down, pause the video, and when you're done, check it. If you get stuck, look back up at your steps and just keep trying to do it until you can complete this problem by yourself, and then unpause and come back. Okay, so now, example number 2, we have the same thing, except we have a y by itself. So this is set up perfectly for me to do substitution method. So anywhere I see a y, I can plug in 4x minus 2. So I'm going to take 4x minus 2, and I'll plug it in. Now we're going to just solve this problem down. So we did the derivative property, 20x minus 10, combine your like terms, solve the two-step equation. I'm kind of going through the solving a little bit quicker because we've been doing this for 6 months now. So we should have solving equations down pretty well. Now everywhere we see an x, we know that that value is now 1. And so we can plug that into either equation. I'm going to choose to plug it into this one. And we just solve it down. 2 times 1 is 2. Solve the two-step. And divide last always. So we find out that our solution is the point 1, 2. All right, so I want you to try this one on your own. I want you to pause the video, and then when you come back, I'm going to have it work. I'm going to work it for you, and you can check your steps. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so you should have it already paused, already done. And so what you're going to do is take this value and plug it in for y. And so you should have got 2x minus 3 times 4 minus x equals 18. That's the substitution part. Simplify, what's the negatives? Negatives, just like in chapter 1, Negatives cost you points, right? So negative times a negative gives you a positive. Any point you make a mistake, make sure you go back in and correct that so you understand where you made the mistake. So now we have 5x minus 12 is equal to 18. And I'm just solving this equation down until I get x by itself. Okay, so we found out x is 6. And then I'm going to go plug it back in. It doesn't matter which one you plug it back into, but I'm just going to choose this so I can stay consistent with the other examples. And I'm going to take that 6, I'm going to plug it in. So I'm going to get 2 times 6 minus 3y equals 18. Well, 2 times 6 is 12. And we're going to solve that two-step. Now we got negative 3y is equal. Negative 3y is equal to 6. Divide by negative 3. And we get y is equal to a negative 2. So my solution to this system would be the point 6, negative 2. Remember, it's always x comma y. Okay, so check your steps on that. Make on your notes, make sure you did it correctly. If you didn't, please identify where you made the mistakes. Remember that learning algebra, especially when you're solving equations, is knowing how to do it and then eliminating those mistakes. So if you were able to substitute correctly in both places, then you understand the process of how to do substitution method. Now you just need to work on getting rid of the simple mistakes. All right, so let's try the next one. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, you should have it worked, and now we should be back. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to substitute it in for y, because that's what y equals. And so we're going to have 3x plus 5 times, instead of y, I'm going to substitute 2x minus 3. We're going to distribute and solve this down. If you're still having trouble with solving equations, we need to spend some time in tutorials. So make sure you come into my Zoom tutorials or in the mornings, and let's work on this and make sure we got this down. Because once you're able to solve equations, you understand that process, it makes everything else much easier. Okay? All right, so when you got down to the bottom, you should have had x is equal to 1. Now, I'm going to show you. You can plug it into either one. I'm going to go ahead and stay consistent and plug it back into that first one, just like I've been doing. It doesn't matter which one that you plug it back into, you'll get the same answer because the solution doesn't change. So we plugged in the x for 1 for x. We get 3 plus 5y equal negative 2. And we just solved this simple two-step. And we find out that y is going to be equal to a negative 1. Okay, so the solution is going to be, remember, it's x comma y, so it's going to be 1. Negative 1 is my solution. All right, so great job. Now, you can use the graphing method still to solve any of these, but the problem is you would have to get y by itself on this one, right, in order to be able to graph. And so ultimately, you're going to have 3 different methods to choose from. And the way that they present the problem to you is going to dictate which one you use. And so if you've already got y by itself on both of the problems, then you would want to use graphing method like you already learned. If they give you one variable that's by itself, then you would want to use the substitution method, right? And then we'll learn the elimination method next, and we'll see what that looks like. All right, so I want you to go ahead and go do your practice. Go do your start checkout and your ticket out the door. Remember, this is one of those units that's a little difficult, and you have to stay on top of it. So if you need extra assistance, please come to tutorials and let me help you. All right, you guys have a great day.